what I challenge my peers to do is really change your approach. And what you'll be surprised at, and what I've experienced, is by changing your approach and your mindset, is you actually do end up making a more secure culture without trying to forcibly change the culture of the company.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative, in conjunction with Cyber Reason, is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome David Nolan, Vice President of Information Security at Aaron's.
I've been in IT for a while, but I've always traditionally started on the development side, so really get an opportunity to build things and be highly creative. But I was always that kid that liked taking clocks apart and seeing how they worked. And I think security really provides that for a lot of us, the ability to kind of deconstruct problems and analyze not necessarily how things should work, but how you can make them work in different ways. And I think people that are genuinely curious in that regard are naturally drawn to security, very similar to me. So security is fun because every day is something new. It always feels like you're doing catch up, which can be frustrating, but honestly, that's part of the fun, right? Is always trying to play chess and predict what's going to happen before it actually happens.
I think that's so true of being able to look at things in a different way and take things apart. And so you've worked for different types of industries and agencies in your career. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I've bounced around, I guess. I've worked for some Fortune 50 companies, so started out my career very early on with State Farm, doing a lot of development and stuff. I had a brief stint with the Central Intelligence Agency, doing a lot of IT and different field support there. It was a unique experience. And then probably the bulk of my career was really at Caterpillar, making my way through various IT jobs and development and management, and then ultimately through security. So it's been all over the place. And then currently I'm with Aaron's as the Director of Information Security. So really have an opportunity to work with a unique culture to apply security to. And I think that's really ultimately why I wrote this particular article, is moving through different cultures and trying to apply different security concepts, different, call it frameworks, different approaches to security. I've quickly learned that you really have to be creative and adapt to the specific company.
And so you've worked you worked for government agencies, you worked for manufacturing, retail. I mean, that's quite a wide insurance companies. They're all very different in how they operate.
Definitely, yeah. And it's like I said, it's not a one size fits all. I think that's part of the challenge, or probably the problem we've had in our industry, and part of the reason why I think we've had some of these stigmas that we've been fighting for years is. Definitely early on in my career, I've made that mistake, right? And then I mentioned that in the insert into the book, where you take something that worked at one company and you try and shove it into the next company, and you soon realize that either that doesn't work for one reason or another, or it creates so much friction with the culture or with the way things are done that ultimately you're far less successful than you want. So it's really taught me to take a step back at each new industry, each new company that I'm at. Start with really understanding the company first, understanding the culture, understanding the risk tolerance, understanding with how work gets done, how things are built, both on the IT side, but also how things are operating on the business side. And then once you have a better understanding of that, really adapt your security approach to that particular company.
So why don't you walk us through that? I know I loved your article because it really, instead of being that, the doctor no or the security department about how you've had to adapt to different cultures. So why don't you just walk us through that, with, what you mean by that and some examples of that.
Yeah, so I'm a kind of an analogy type of guy. So the way I'd look at it is, things like, let's start with like NIST 853, right? Think about trying to apply that to a startup and the culture of a startup. I think in an example like that, there are definitely highly regulated industries and with government and stuff where those very vast documents and frameworks work, but trying to apply that to a startup with lean teams, trying to move very quickly, just doesn't work, right? So what I challenge my peers and myself to do is really understand that business functions. Understand maybe there is regulations that you need to fully apply and where those traditional frameworks will work, but maybe you're in an industry with a high risk tolerance, right? And naturally, if you try to apply an approach that integrates low risk tolerance, right, where you say no a lot and where you're constantly setting up requirements and saying this has to happen before you can go forwards. If you're in a highly innovative company, highly risk tolerant company, you're ultimately going to create more friction and get nothing done, right? Versus understanding that first, understanding maybe the speed that you innovate, the speed that things are done, maybe even the technology and the way that new technologies are adapted, and then approaching that and saying, okay, we're going to embrace that culture, kind of the DevOps handbook concept. When you see security evolving throughout there, we're going to embrace that culture and then ultimately secure it. What I've experienced is you get far more done than taking a traditional approach, because security starts to become, I hate to use the buzzword because a lot of people are starting to use it, but really an enabler, and you're seen as a partner with the business. So it's not, oh, well, security's here, they're going to create something that makes us not be able to do what we want to do. We've really, especially in my current position, been able to really move mountains on adopting security, on a lot of teams even that aren't in security, leading with a security first mindset. And it's not the old adage of changing the culture, right? Where we've said that for years, back in the early 2000s, late 90s. Really what I challenge my peers to do is really change your approach. And what you'll be surprised at, and what I've experienced, is by changing your approach and your mindset, is you actually do end up making a more secure culture without trying to forcibly change the culture of the company.
So that's I really like that of changing your own mindset. So how do you get that person who sees security coming and they're open, they have open arms and they're embracing you and saying, "Oh, great! I'm glad security finally arrived," because that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get to be that partner in the business?
Yeah, it takes time, right? And you have to do more than lip service. And I fear that there's a lot of CISOs out there that are really doing that, right? Saying what we all want to say, but then not actually doing it, right? So that means even in the hardest of times, where you want to say no immediately, and there's a ton of resistance. I'm constantly challenging my teams to don't lead with no, lead with KNOW, which is all about start with the what. What are you trying to accomplish? What are the outcomes, the targeted outcomes, and the things you're trying to accomplish? And let's see if we can enable those, and then we're going to secure them, right? Now it takes both sides to be successful here. This isn't saying do whatever the business wants, right? And let them be cowboys and cowgirls and just have fun, right? Really what it is understanding what they're trying to do and working with them to meet that, and then working together to secure that. Because what you find is when you meet in the middle, Um, if you find them being resistant, or you find your teams or security being resistant, if you keep going back to what are we trying to achieve, what's the business objective in this particular case, um, the solution that both teams will arrive to is quite often different than what you thought it would be. But at the end of the day, you're meeting the business objectives and you're doing it securely, and that's a win-win for both teams.
And how do you manage your teams that may be adamant or passionate about? You have that security engineer analyst that says, no, this is just going to open us up to all kinds of vulnerabilities. How do you balance that?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, because I think to be successful with this approach, because again, I'm not saying this is the right approach in all cases, but it's worked for us, and that is one of the key challenges, right? Because what you can speak it, especially as a leader in security, it goes back to the lip service thing. If your teams aren't following along and really champion it, it's going to be destructive. So that's a key thing that I'm continually beating the drum on. And you start with the traditional things, the strategy, the guiding principles, the way we work. I talk a lot about getting your hands dirty in the fact that we're not just dumping vulnerability reports on people. We're trying to understand how people use these reports, how we can make them more valuable, ultimately in some cases helping fix the problems, right? So it's just a constant drumbeat with your team of the message we just talked about. And when you see those indicators that they're straying from that, when you see a team reviewing an architecture or reviewing the risk of a situation, doing a threat model, and they say, this is dumb, or I told you so, or any of these kind of key words that are counter to this culture you're establishing, you have to really nip those in the bud immediately and reinforce that, hey, security is here to be risk advisors. Ultimately, even when I've talked to some people that are in the security industry, they choose not to fix vulnerabilities. They're a business at the end of the day, just like all of us. So security really needs to be that business decision. And this culture we're talking about, reinforcing with their teams, hey, we're not here to always say no. We're here to advise the business of what those decisions they could make or will make could potentially impact the business and make them more educated in those decision making. And it really is a cultural shift. And I think the key to your question is just reinforcing it continually with your team and getting them to be your champions more than just finding champions out in the business to start with.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, available at Amazon.com and other booksellers. And how do you, when you're working with, external, internal auditors that are looking at compliance regulations and going down the list of, well, now you're not doing this and you're deciding to not, take care of these vulnerabilities. How do you satisfy that part of the business when you're saying, well, I've had to adapt to the culture of the business?
Yeah, it's not. I don't mean to infer that you're not going to do security, because that's definitely not the case. It's more of that. It's the approach to doing it, right? So, we've been able to do some crazy things in the last few years, but what I've learned is it's not in the way that necessarily the industry says. Is like I said in the article, you got to challenge the status quo, right? So if you're in a highly innovative company that's heavily in the cloud, maybe doing tons of containers and serverless type concepts, right? Like what we've experienced, for example, is there may not be off-the-shelf security packages there, and you may have to create them. You may have to use open source. You may have to work with the Microsofts and Amazons of the world to come up with these solutions. And while that's not the easy way, and it's not something you can point at a magic quadrant and say this vendor has this, solves this problem. When you start working with these regulators, QSAs for PCI and that type of thing, and you understand or help them understand that, hey, we're meeting all of the controls, right? We're meeting everything and the spirit of everything that's required, but we're doing it in a way that you're not familiar with. If you have an auditor or an outside consultant. I had one very early on in this journey that, give you a very specific example, was adamant that you're not a mature company if you don't have a WAF. And I was trying to help him understand that, hey, we've got, real-time application security protection. This is meeting the same controls that you're talking about, and arguably in a potentially better way. And he kept saying, well, mature companies have a WAF in their application security portfolio, and you guys really need to do this to become a leading company. It's like, if we as an industry get so stuck in our ways that we're not open to understanding that you're meeting the spirit of the controls, just in a different way, we're never going to innovate as an industry. So I think to your question, to really sum that up, is you have to also have auditors, regulators, and QSAs and the such that you can bring along and help understand that you're meeting everything that framework or that authoritative document, or that particular regulation says. It's just maybe in a different way.
And it's probably why we still have antivirus on every machine. There's been other solutions that have shown that are actually superior to the signature-based antivirus products, but we don't get rid of them because we're going to fail an audit checklist.
Certainly, I agree. Yeah, there's definitely a whole list of those things, right? You look at like the old way we started security, protecting the borders, right, with IDS and IPS and all that stuff. And there's a lot of host-based solutions now. There's a lot of micro-segmentation or application-based segmentation concepts and other things. And you're right. I've been in so many meetings where it says, well, you have to have this. You have to have antivirus, right? It puts us in a hard thing where we just keep stacking tools on top of tools on top of tools. But I think we just need to educate a lot as security leaders. Both that's why a number of us are involved in helping with government regulations and stuff, because you have to bring everybody along, and education is really the key.
Sure. What are some of those business goals that you found to be the most challenging to get security to be part of that fabric of the new innovation or new product rolling out?
Business goals. It depends on the approach to that particular question. I think one of the regular rolling challenges on the technical side is currently, we're a very innovative company from a technology perspective, very early adopters, really trying to change our particular industry. And one of our biggest challenges is just being super adaptable, because you'll start with a particular team one day, and I alluded to it before. Maybe they're doing AKS, container, based approaches in Azure one day, and they're getting all the benefits from those. And then the next day they go, we're going to move to a complete microarchitecture and use serverless or function-based concepts. And us as a security group, like I said, trying to enable the business, have to constantly say, okay, we're going to work with you to move to that technology or that concept and still meet all the business goals, but do it securely. And in a lot of cases, again, you talked about the culture of the security team. We find that you try to apply the same tools, the same concepts that worked, maybe vulnerability scanning to a container or to something like serverless, and those concepts just don't always port over. So that's been a big challenge for us, both as a security group, but I think us, or me as a leader as well, is meeting those innovation requirements and still making it secure. We've been able to do it, but again, it keeps going back to this thing I keep saying, just in a different way than I think you expect.
And it's hard to make those shifts too, isn't it? Because the skill sets now, you're trying to work with a group that has built up these skill sets in this area. Now, it's almost like playing catch up in some ways as a security team to really be able to help in that environment.
100%. And I think too, I've had to change the way I hire as well. And actually that's helped in this industry. You talk all about people saying that we can't fill these jobs. I've moved to focusing on people who are more adaptable, people who can develop, automate, people who can be, the true engineer side of the house. I'm not looking for tool jockeys or people who are security analysts who have years of experience with this particular tool set, that type of thing. I'm looking for innovative people who can either create or automate or integrate security concepts and security solutions into these new ways of doing things. And what I mean by it's helped on the hiring side is, I'm not looking for someone who's got that 20 years of security experience on their resume that everybody's fighting for. I'm looking for potentially scrappy new developers who are looking to do something creative. Maybe I'm looking for somebody who's coming from the DevOps teams and wants to, who's shown promise in security, but wants to create solutions that can help the other DevOps teams, but do it securely. And what I've found is those people already exist in your company, or there's a lot more potential of those people to be hired out there in the industry.
David, this has been great. Do you have any other observations you want to share before we close?
I think the biggest thing I can say, or the biggest lessons learned and kind of challenge out to the CISOs out there and security leaders is we just have to be vulnerable, and we have to be willing to relook at our approach to security. If our end goal is to secure the company and get adoption of security, sometimes we also have to be willing to meet in the middle and change the way we do things. And I think that's really the whole summary of the whole point of my article is. I'm at least one testament that if we're able to change the way we do this, if we're willing to understand the business, put our approach in business terms, and potentially do things a little bit differently with the same end goal, you can actually get more adoption. You can have more success. But that really starts with us willing to do things differently and just trying to be vulnerable.
Well, thank you very much, David, and thanks for your contribution to the CISO Compass book, because I think your article really gets to the heart as to what we should be doing as security leaders.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much, David.
Cybereason is the champion for today's defenders, providing an endpoint security platform to prevent, detect, and respond to malicious operations on computers, mobile devices, servers, and the cloud. Cybereason. End cyber attacks from endpoints to the enterprise to everywhere. Learn more at cybereason.com/CISO stories.